Welcome back, everyone. It is so great to have you here for another explainer. Today, we're jumping right back in time to August 1942. Picture the Eastern Front of World War II. It's a theater of conflict that was rapidly entering one of its absolute darkest chapters. Down in the Soviet city of Stalingrad, two massive, heavily armed military machines were about to collide in a way the world had literally never seen before.
And this wasn't just some run-of-the-mill skirmish. What followed in this city became one of the most brutal, devastating battles in human history. It was this terrifying clash of wills that would ultimately stand as a monumental turning point, a moment that completely changed the entire trajectory of World War II.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the scale of this massive event, we're going to walk through 5 key phases today. We'll start with the stakes of Stalingrad, then move into the urban meat grinder, followed by the massive Soviet counterattack, trapped in the winter, and finally, the ultimate turning point. So let's kick things off with Phase 1, the stakes of Stalingrad in the summer of 1942. By that summer, Nazi Germany was aggressively pushing deep into Soviet territory. But think about the contrast in their goals here. On one side, you've got Hitler's strategic logic. The German army desperately needed to capture the oil-rich Caucasus region to fuel their war machine, right? Plus, they absolutely had to secure the Volga River since it was this massive transportation route. That's the tactical, military logic. But then, on the flip side, there was this intense, purely symbolic obsession with this one specific city. Why? Well, because it literally bore the name of the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin. Capturing it wouldn't just be a military win, it was going to be the ultimate psychological strike. Moving right along to our second phase, the urban meat grinder and the devastating bombing of the city. Driven by that mix of strategic need and intense symbolic obsession, German aircraft launched these absolutely devastating bombing raids in August of 42. Now, they were fully expecting a rapid victory once they reduced the city to smoking ruins. But man, the reality was shockingly different. Instead of some easy mop-up operation, they hit this insanely fierce Soviet resistance. And in a brilliant and frankly desperate tactical pivot, Soviet soldiers actually used the destroyed city ruins, the very rubble created by the German bombs, as heavily fortified defensive positions. So what was supposed to be a quick conquest turned into this terrifying, visceral, building-to-building meat grinder. We're talking about a struggle for individual streets, and sometimes even single factories. There's a quote that perfectly captures the chaotic, relentless exhaustion of this urban warfare. Capture one building during the day, only to lose part of it again at night. Just let that sink in for a second. It highlights this brutal back-and-forth reality. Soldiers were fighting tooth and nail for mere inches of ground, day after endless day. This brings us to Phase 3, the massive Soviet counterattack, which was essentially a secret offensive. So, while the Germans were completely bogged down in all that urban combat, Soviet commanders were secretly preparing an absolute masterstroke outside the city. The plan broke down like this. First, pin the core German forces down in that bloody urban fighting. Keep them occupied. Then, step 2, and this was the real genius of it, instead of attacking the hardened German lines head-on, the Soviets attacked the weaker Romanian and Hungarian forces that were guarding the German flanks. Finally, step 3. By breaking through those weaker flanks, the Red Army was able to slowly close an inescapable trap, completely surrounding the German Sixth Army from both sides. And that sets the stage for Phase 4, trapped in the winter, as the trap finally closes. The Soviet pincer movement was a total success. The Axis troops who had swaggered into Stalingrad as conquerors were suddenly completely surrounded. 250,000. Just pause and think about the sheer scale of that disaster for the Axis command. Over 250,000 soldiers woke up to find themselves completely trapped inside the ruins of the very city they were trying to take. And the conditions inside that trap? Absolutely horrifying. They weren't just fighting the Soviet army anymore. Supplies of food, ammunition, and fuel became dangerously scarce. On top of that, the infamous Russian winter arrived, and temperatures dropped dramatically. These trapped soldiers were facing extreme hunger, widespread disease, and just total mind-numbing exhaustion. And perhaps the most fatal element of all this, Hitler explicitly ordered the army to hold its position. He flatly refused to allow a full retreat back when they actually still might have had a chance to break out. Which leads us to our final phase, the ultimate turning point, where the German position finally collapses. Between those catastrophic winter siege conditions and the relentless Soviet pressure, the German position was completely doomed. It's actually wild how rapidly this builds. In November 1942, we get the initial Soviet encirclement. Then, just a couple of brutal months later, by January 1943, the German position completely collapses under the weight of starvation, freezing temperatures, and non-stop combat. And finally, on February 2nd, 1943, the remaining Axis forces in Stalingrad officially surrendered. The battle was over. So, what does this all mean? Why does this matter on a global scale? Well, this wasn't just a lost battle. It was a catastrophic defeat for Germany that completely shattered their aura of invincibility on the Eastern Front. Conversely, it provided a massive, much-needed morale boost for the Soviet Union. It fundamentally proved to the entire world that this seemingly unstoppable German military machine could, in fact, be stopped and defeated. From this point forward, the overarching strategic momentum shifted permanently toward the Soviet Union. When we look back at the history today, it's so clear that Stalingrad was much more than a battle for one city. It became this enduring global symbol of resistance, unimaginable sacrifice, and the truly horrific, enormous human cost of modern warfare. It's basically a testament to what happens when immovable resolve meets catastrophic conditions. Which leaves us with this massive, echoing question to think about. How did the grueling, microscopic struggle for a single ruined city ultimately change the macro trajectory of the deadliest war in human history? The mechanics of this battle, the tactical choices, and the immense human endurance completely altered the course of the modern world. It's a staggering piece of history, and I really hope walking through it today has sparked your curiosity to explore it even further. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.